Alright, hello. This video is for showing how to set up your lab notebooks. Okay, now I would suggest you watch the entire video before you go back and try to fill some of this out. Because you only get one chance at a lot of this. You must do everything in your lab notebook, good lord, I can't talk, in blue or black pen. The cover, you can do in whatever color you want. But the inside, everything on the inside of your lab notebook must be in blue or black pen. And I have lots of blue and black pens that you can use. If you are at home, obviously, you're on your own. The only shade of black that is acceptable is black. Duh. Gray is not acceptable. It has to actually be black. But you can use pretty much any shade of gray, as long as there's no question of, is that green? That looks like it might be getting green or purple. It needs to be blue, but light blue, dark blue, so a couple shades in between. If you want to use different colors to distinguish between different stuff, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so we're going to start with your front cover. Okay, and I'm going to say pause as if this is your second time, but you know, you get the idea. Okay, so this is what goes on the front cover. You should have two lines. If you have a standard composition book, you should have two lines on the front cover. Okay, the first line, you're going to write your first and your last name, and you're going to put in parentheses at the end 24, the current year, or if this is later, a different year, whatever your year is, 24 dash, and then leave this blank. Now, if you don't take another chemistry class, then it's going to be 24-25. If you take Chem 2 next year, then it might be 24-26. But you won't fill this out until you're actually done. Okay, so pause it, do that. The second line, you're going to put chemistry, because this is a chemistry lab notebook. Whether you use it Chem 1, Chem 2, Chem 3, Chem 4, Chem 5, whatever, it's chemistry. So it's just chemistry notebook. And then we're going to put colon, volume 1 of, and then a blank. You can either actually physically draw a blank or just leave an empty space. If you have a normal composition book, I don't think you'll run out of space, but it's possible, depending on how big you choose to write, how many pages you choose to use. There are reasons why you might end up with a second volume. And if you do, you'll have to set up that second volume. And we'll talk about how to do that if it comes up. Okay, so that's your front cover. Now, one other thing that I just remembered that I meant to say at the beginning of this, so it's a good thing you didn't start yet. If you went and got your own, and you don't have the two big lines across the top of your lab notebook, you may have to draw them in on your own with a Sharpie. I would also not try to use pen on the cover of your lab notebook, because pen ink will smear really easily. I would use Sharpie of one color or another. Again, I don't care what color. I would request that the text color and the line colors be different. Okay, now black being an obvious exception. If the printed lines are black and you want to write in black, that's fine. You will also need to write on your spine. You'll have to put your name there, but I can show you what I mean there later, because you probably want to use a metallic Sharpie for that, because just about any other Sharpie is going to be very difficult to see. Okay, so now let's talk about your page numbers. Okay, so here is a page. Specifically, this would be a right page. So if you're looking at here, so if you've got it just spread open, right page, left page, this is a right page. Okay, there are a couple of things I want to mention. First off, you need to number every page in your lab notebook. Your first grade on your lab notebook is going to include me flipping to random pages in your notebook and making sure that you have numbered every single one of your pages. The first page is page 1, and you should end up with, if you have a standard composition book, you should end up at 200. Now, when you're numbering the pages, you always number at the top and on the outside. Your number should be large, like it should be really easy to read. Okay, for some of you, you're going to have to write excessively large, you're going to feel like. But it should fill most of this space in this corner. You have plenty of room here. Put the number there and make it easy to read. Try to keep the number, okay? Remember, you're writing in ink, so you can't go back and erase anything. Keep the number on that side of the red line, okay? Or on the other page on this side of the red line. It should be in the corner, not on the top. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just stop there. If you make a mistake, don't scribble anything out. You are not allowed to you're not allowed to scribble anything out or render anything illegible in your lab notebook. Okay, so if you have messy handwriting, you know who you are. If you have messy handwriting, you need to write very, very slowly. Take your time and make sure that every page number is legible. Not kind of legible, not good for you, clear and legible. Okay, I have to be able to read it. I shouldn't have to go, well, what page is before and after? I am going to look at the page number, and if I can't tell what it says in an instant, you're not getting your points. It must be clearly legible. Okay, now, going back to mistakes. It's not uncommon, especially on page numbers, to make a mistake. If you're going slow, taking your time, this shouldn't be a big problem for you. But make sure your pages don't stick together. If your pages stick together, you're going to have to go back and renumber everything, and you're going to have to cross out the numbers that you've written. Now, I want to show you the proper way to do that. Okay, let's say you messed up on page 173. Okay, and it was supposed to say 174. What a bunch of you want to do is you want to go, and then write the 174 above it. If you do that, you will lose points. You should never scribble anything out, and you're going to have to renumber every page after this if you make that mistake. So, again, take your time, go slow, write legibly. What you do if you make a mistake at any point in your lab notebook, could be in the table of contents, it could be on your page number, it could be in your write-up. You are not allowed to render anything illegible. What you have to do, put one or maybe two lines through it to indicate this was wrong, and then you can write the corrected information above or below. Okay? So when you're doing this, you have to make sure that the mistake is legible. Okay, now, page numbers, this doesn't really make sense. This is more to get you in practice for when you inevitably make mistakes in your lab notebook when you're writing down data or writing out your procedure, whatever. Okay, you are not allowed to render anything illegible. It must all be clear. Okay, the other thing to keep in mind when you're doing this, you can, totally valid option, you can cross it out in a different color and write the correction in a different color. That will make it easier to see. It'll make it clearer. Like if you write your original text as black and your cross out is blue, it's going to be very obvious. You're not going to conceal anything, so you won't have to worry as much about rendering something illegible that way. Okay, on the table of contents, okay, the very first page of your lab notebook is your table of contents. Okay, so I'm going to treat this as page 1. So I'm going to write a 1. Okay, we're going to put your table of contents here. You need to put on the first line, not the big space up at the top. You never, ever write up here. That's what this green mark is for. You never write in the top section, and you never write in the last 3 lines either. Yeah, you only write in the rest of the space. That is so that when you're going back, if you have to go back and make corrections, you have space to put those corrections and keep your handwriting legible. Okay, so never write on the top line, never write on the last 3 white spaces. Okay, so this white space, and this white space are off limits. Those are the 3 spots you can't write in. Ditto the top. You can't write anything up here other than, obviously, your page numbers. Okay, so we're going to put the table of contents, the heading, table of contents, here. So I'm going to pause this, lay this down, and write it because I am not going to be able to write legibly at this angle. So I'll be right back. All right, now you can see that I did not get it perfectly centered. That is okay. It's clearly intended to be centered, but it will look better if you manage to center it properly. Just a heads up. You're then going to skip one line. So you're not going to write anything on this line. You're going to leave that blank. And then the very first entry in your table of contents is going to be, wait for it, table of contents. And yes, I'm serious. Okay, so I've written here table of contents, and on the other end of the line, I have put page 1, because that's the page the table of contents is found on. Okay, now the second thing you put in here is going to be the title of your first lab, which I'll go ahead and tell you is going to be oxidation of magnesium. Now, you have a little bit of a choice here. You can, if you want, and this kind of comes down to your handwriting, I would suggest, you can just write on the next line and put oxidation of magnesium. If your handwriting looks like mine and a few other people's, then you probably want to skip a line between each entry in your table of contents. So, I'll be right back. All right, and this is a problem you guys shouldn't run into because you have a much bigger space to write on. But you're going to write oxidation of magnesium. You can write out magnesium, or you can abbreviate it, Mg. And then in parentheses, you're going to put introduction. Now, technically, this should be on one line. I didn't have enough space, so I went down to the next line. Don't worry about putting a page number yet, because we're going to have to talk a little bit about how you choose to write in your lab notebook before you decide whether you're going to write on both sides of the page or on just one side. So that's something else to keep in mind. That's going to be it for this. There's probably a couple of things that I didn't think to mention. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. If you don't want to start yet until you've emailed me and asked me those questions, that's perfectly fine. You have a couple of days until this has to be done. Provided you're watching this on the day you're supposed to be watching it. You have a couple of days. Okay, so, yeah. Cover, page numbers, table of contents. Those are the main three things I want you guys to have done. And you're not going to be able to finish the table of contents for reasons. And that's pretty much it. So, bye.